Hello and welcome back to Factorial. My name is Bucknasty. Today's episode, I'm going to be going and looking over Friday Facts number 441. I think everyone and their mother has gone and done a review of this, and I'm late to the game, but I'm going to go and talk about it because I'm going to present it from my perspective of how I think this is going to impact megabasing. And if there's a section that I'm not as interested in, I'm just going to quickly skim over it and I'll talk about it. There's a bunch of other videos that have talked about it already, so at length about how it impacts the early game and mid game, and you can definitely go and watch other content creators and their perspectives on it. I'm going to focus on megabasing specifically. And this is also going to be a link in the video description. You can just read this yourself in your free time. So what's going to be changing? Mixed rockets. I know this is a big change that people have been requesting, especially for early game where you don't want to be wasting processing units or rocket fuel by sending an individual rocket payload for this item, this item, this item, this item, this item, and always sending full stacks. You may have an example like this space platform that's over here on the left, and you may just want to have 4 furnaces that you want to launch up at once. So this allows you now to very simply go and start filling the unfulfilled requests, and then it's going to go and load those into the rocket silo. So one at a time. This seems like it goes and kind of does a sequence like this, and it's not always going to be perfect because you may actually not have in your logistics network enough to fulfill all the requests. So in that case, if you're out of items that you're going to need, it goes back, and as those items eventually get available, it'll start filling those other slots until a rocket silo is actually full, and then once it's full, it'll go and launch it. So that's how that works. So that means you might go and launch a little bit extra than you're going to want, but it at least guarantees that it balances the ability to mix it, but also not wasting a rocket silo in case that you only requested one item, that it doesn't just launch the one chemical plant, it actually waits to fill everything up. I think that's a nice solution. And they even admit here it's going to still fail sometimes due to the sorting constraints, and they did their best to implement. So I'm very excited to see it once it actually comes out. So this will probably be not super helpful for me in the late game that I'm in, but I could see it here for Vulcanus if you have a general space platform builder like this, that I can go and launch those items and more quickly get them up to the space platform, and then not send extra items that I don't need, and I always wind up dropping those back to the planet anyway. So that kind of saves that step. In the late game, you're not really going to care because usually it's all about throughput, and you're going to be already preloading all your rocket silos with all the items you're going to need, so that when they launch immediately the moment that the actual space platform comes above the planet. So not a huge difference for megabasing specifically, but probably really great for when you're building a space platform, or you have those random ad hoc requests that you're going to go and need to fill, or you're going to be building a new ship, right? Otherwise, for throughput reasons, you're always going to preload the rocket like we've got going on right there. So the next thing is platform construction deadlocks. I never really experienced this. I experienced this early on in space platforms of just waiting around and not prioritizing the right things. What they're saying here is they tried to make a fix here to make it a little bit better. Long story short, you now can kind of get around this with there was a way to do it with custom minimum payloads, but they've tried to remove this deadlock. So I'll skim over this a little bit. So they expanded mod supports for rockets. This is cool. What they did here is they increased the maximum lift weight so that now instead of only being able to send 1 ton, you could go and have it scale with quality, or they could scale it so that you can now have for modded runs, you can now send, instead of 400 steel, which is equivalent to 1 ton in the Factorial universe, you can now, with 3 tons, you can send 1,200. So it allows you to scale certain rockets so that they can deliver a larger throughput in one go compared to what you could do otherwise. So that's nice. That's an ability that they've added to, as long as it has the launch of space platform prototype, then there's going to be an ability to go do that. Cool. Nice for modding support. So next thing, this is pretty nice. Space platform improvements. The ability to import from any. So right now, what is going to happen is that if you leave the import from blank, that now means import from all locations compared to import from none. So that's a nice thing, because what that means is if we look at this particular case here, I have a ship that's actually utilizing this property. So right now, I am specifically requesting calcite, and I'm asking it to send just 1 calcite here from Novice. The reason I'm doing that is because in this space platform hub, I am going and crafting ad hoc whenever we fall low on calcite. I go and I set here the advanced oxide asteroid crushing recipe to go and start going and creating calcite. You'll see this here on the space platform trip. It's going to go and travel back and forth. Right now it's traveling back to Novice from Gleba. It's always picking up some science. And then whenever this happens to drop below 10, which it should probably do here in a second, it's going to go and set the recipe on here to the advanced oxide crushing recipe, and it'll go and craft it until it gets up to 100. Should see it in a second as it goes and travels back here. When it goes and sets this recipe here, this should consume it. There you go. And then it goes and continues to craft it until we have enough calcite. And if you don't go and set this request here, what's going to happen is that because Novice is always requesting calcite, because we need a lot of it to craft science on the platform, then this calcite would drop to Novice. And the problem with that is that eventually the Space Platform Hub would get completely filled with ice, or you'd have to dump the ice off the platform. We don't want that. So that's a complication. Now, this particular case, I only ever need to request it from Novice. But in the case that, let's say I'm going and I need to actually be going to more planets, if I'm requesting this from Novice, now it will drop to any other planet. So the convenient part of saying, hey, I want to request this from any, would be that you bypass that whole entire situation. If I want to make sure that if I don't drop it to Vulcanus, for example, I'd have to create another net new logistics group here like this and set it to that planet. And if I need another one, then I would go here and I'd say calcite again. And now I'd have to select another planet, for example. And so you can see this list continues to go on and on and on, right? So the reason that behavior was annoying is because it's just tedious to set that up. So that's one of the things that they tried to fix here, and that's the case that they actually call out specifically here. There are some cases where we want to import items from basically all locations, or at the very least prevent dropping items at any planet. That's the exact situation I'm talking about. But the main example is that platforms themselves need fuel cells, repair packs, etc. So it's somewhat possible to achieve it with the multiple logistics sections, so the thing that I was just showing off, but that's just tedious. Instead, we just implemented the common suggestion of leave the import from blank, which now means import from all locations. Huge quality of life change. Very excited for that. That'll be nice. So no leaving with trash. Related problem is that you have a filter set to trash on a specific location. So for example, you might dump depleted uranium cell fuel cells at Novice whenever you use it up. So it's possible that the platform would leave with the items still in the trash slots. This causes a little bit of an unwanted problem in some situations, essentially randomly deciding where the items would end up. So we amended the platform logic so that it will wait to clear its trash slots before leaving the current location, if there's a surface to trash to. So kind of a nice change. What does that mean? That means that if you apply to any item manually trashing, of course, so your expedition ships don't leave while you're waiting for your construction robots and such. But you can also notice in the screenshots a new diode next to the orbital drop slots panel, which is hovering. This will show the status of the drop logic, such as waiting for item drop cooldown or all surface stations are busy. This has always not been super clear for people. I've seen this quite a bit on the forums where they're just wondering, why is my space platform currently still stuck? Well, it's trying to drop things and you just do not have enough throughput on the planet to accept them all at once. So you just don't have enough. In this case, we're talking about things like this. We do not have enough of the cargo bays to accept all the items, and so it's stuck kind of waiting to drop those items because there's still active requests on the planet. So nice change. This is the largest game changer for, I think, the entire game throughout, from the mid game to the end game to the ultra late end game where I'm at. This is going to change everything, especially this is going to change Prometheum. And I'll get into that in a second. So what's changing? So in orbital requests, you can specify now from which place the filter will request from. So you can now request to import from platforms. This is huge. I've been wanting something like this for a while. I'm so excited that they're doing this. What this means now is you can have, in theory, a space platform that is sitting over any of these planets, and the rockets can be constantly launching items into that space platform as a buffer. And then whenever a ship happens to travel over, and like in this case, it's going to go and request that electromagnetic science, it can now choose, I'm not going to go and pick it up directly from the surface. I can actually request this now from a space platform that's sitting, hovering stationary over that planet. So there will be situations where you're not going to need quite the number of rockets to quickly launch all those items into space. And these buffer stations here, you could actually be directly inserting it into a rocket silo and then constantly launch those items into a buffer station that just sits as a surface over Novice. We'll have to test this out for UPS to see which method is going to win out, but this does solve a lot of problems, especially here on Vulcanus, where I have per assembly machine or per furnace here, foundry, I have 2 rocket silos just to maximize the throughput to quickly launch as fast as possible all the actual science up to the space platform that's requesting it. So this kind of burst operation is going to be a lot less necessary in the late game. The biggest change that's going to happen, though, is I think for Promethium. So Promethium traditionally right now, when we're traveling back and forth between planets, you'll see a lot of megabasers are using these huge thruster stacks. You actually don't really need them once you get sufficiently far out into the field, especially once you're out at like this range here. You're going to see here I'm throttling this to 500 kilometers a second, even though we can go to 700. And that's actually slowing down all this. So really, if you're going 500 kilometers a second, you could very close to remove all these extra thruster stacks that are down here. That's pretty massive because if you think about right now, every single section here along the planet, and you're looking at all of these little green chunks, these are all going to be active locations where there are going to be asteroid particles that are floating across the space, across space. So the particles themselves are not expensive unless you're of course looking at them like I am right now. So you can see all those particles that are showing up, and if I look away, then you can see all those particles will slowly go away, and it'll only be the ones that currently those space platforms are trying to go and pick up, right? So those are the only ones that are getting tracked. So then here, what's nice is in the late game, we don't need near the speed to get out into the field like we used to, because we're not having to travel all the way back to Novice to go and pick up biter eggs. Now you can have an Omega thruster stacked ship, if they don't eliminate thruster stacking, to quickly bring the eggs from Novice to Gleba and then hover over Aquilo and have the eggs constantly there. The other option is you could have it go and bring the eggs, pick up, and drop those eggs off on, since the solar system edge is technically a surface, even though you can't travel to it, it's a destination that you could hover over. So in theory, you could send a ship to have a stationary ship that will constantly live and be over the solar system edge, and its sole job is to just accept science from all the harvesters that just go back and forth along this route. And they will then have another ship that comes in and brings the eggs to the solar system edge. That's massive, because what that means is now you don't need those thruster stacks because you don't need that speed. You just need to be traveling back and forth in this location. And then in this case, that's all that these do. They continue to come back, dump the science onto the buffer platform here. And then whenever those basically the egg delivery ships come back, they can pick up the science and they can bring that back over to Novice. They would stop over Aquilo. They can go and pick up here and go and grab some of the quantum processors, for example. And then they could go and come back to Novice, pick up eggs, and on their return trip, drop both the eggs and the extra quantum processors to a giant buffer ship that just sits here over the solar system edge. And you can scale this up and have multiple stations that are just stationary forever here. So that's a really nice concept, because now these ships only need to travel back and forth here, and they can just constantly wait. So that's a huge change to the Promethium, specifically the Promethium expansion that or like the Promethium logistics that would exist. All this will have to be tested out. You'll see very drastically different Promethium ships than we've seen in the past. So that's super exciting to go and see that that's going to be a change. That's how I think it's going to affect it, especially in the late game. So let's look at other things that exist here then as well. One other thing that I'm quite curious about. I don't know what the throughput is. Scanning some of the Factorio official Discord, it looks like it should be actually a little bit faster than the rocket launch, the total ticks it takes to deliver it to the platform. So in theory, if it's a little bit faster than that, then it's probably going to be worth it. Just eliminate thruster stacks altogether on the ships that harvest. So that's going to be all stuff to test out, but super excited about it. This is another massive change, the ability to now set the requests on the hub itself. That's really convenient if you have dynamic requests, especially for ships that are going to be crafting things like, let's say you might have a craft anything mall that sits on a space platform and travels between all the different planets and just requests the items that it needs. So that's a pretty huge change. I'm hoping they can also do things like setting dynamic destinations. That would be really cool, but we can kind of do that right now with circuit interrupts. So we really probably don't need that. Just the ability to set the requests is a really nice change for things like that. I'll have to see how it actually gets used. I don't have immediate thoughts on how I would personally use it right now, but definitely it unlocks certain machines that you wouldn't otherwise go or like certain types of space platforms that you wouldn't think about. This is the most exciting. I just said most exciting. This is the second part. And I think this also immediately applies to megabasing. So the reason I think it does is this is where everything kind of comes together, and they said it exactly right. Now we're going to be able to set a channel on a radar. They're all going to be tied in to the signal ID of so those are the icons that you see. So that's really convenient because a signal ID is made up of two things. It's a name, but also there is a quality associated with it. So a signal can be a regular concrete block, but it could also be an uncommon, rare, epic, or legendary. Conveniently, if you think about it, there's 5 planets, so you could very simply say Novice is always common, Vulcanus is going to be uncommon, Rare is going to be for Fulgora, Gleba is going to get epic, and then Legendary is Aquila. So that is a way that you could think about quality in terms of having a signal per planet. So effectively, right away, you have 5 times any signal that you see on here. And so practically speaking, then you can set any icon that you want to this. So we can also set this as any icon here on a constant combinator. So that means we also have access to all of the extra icons. So we could say a signal. So all the virtual signals, those are all signal IDs. So we can use anything like this to set channels. So that's awesome because what that means now is when I was talking about that we're going to have the ability now to send ships back and forth communicating, now you can even set the requests of how many biter eggs you want. And you could time it specifically and say, hey, I am currently low on this amount. Send a radar signal back to say that I need this amount of biter eggs here to top up the solar system edge. The other thing is you can stop doing things like this really complicated science setup that I have to let me know if I am currently consuming agriculture science. And I use this to throttle all the production here on Gleba, like I showed in about a month ago in a video that I posted. So that's super exciting because that means that when we can get rid of very complicated logic that I have like this. It also means that on a planet, you're not limited to 2 channels. Now you have a huge amount on an individual planet that you have access to. And you can tie into that too. You can say the mode of operation is surface, then it stays with the default behavior where you have a red and a green wire that is globally available everywhere on the surface, so it doesn't break anything like right now. So you can send, just for if you don't know, now you'll know, you can send signals to radars. All radars are connected virtually across the entire surface. But now we can send it anywhere across all surfaces. So this is huge, and this is a huge change that I'm super, super excited about because now we can communicate also to the surfaces. You can have a whole bunch of new things that you're unlocking, and it gets away with some of the token systems that have existed in the past to communicate, hey, which ship is currently going to get biter eggs and which one's not. So a lot of things will change now. And it'll also be easier to go and signal and say, hey, I only want to launch this amount of biter eggs from the surface, and this particular ship that's above orbit is the one that should be getting it. So there's a lot of ways to now do a lot more fine-tuned circuit control with this inter-surface communication that we have. Huge change. And last but not least, there's a new rocket silo animation. I personally don't know what this thing here is. It's welding constantly a new kind of new panel onto this ever expanding tube into the ground. The more that I've thought about it, I'm just going to imagine that, with each successive rocket launch that you're going to send off into the space platform, up into space, you're adding an extra amount that we have to dig into the Earth to anchor this down. I don't know. But it looks nice. It's a very nice change, and I'm assuming also with speed, as you increase the speed of the space platform, or rather of the rocket silo, then this animation will also successively increase in speed. I have not heard anything in terms of if they're going to change this with quality. I would like for rocket silos to scale also with quality, so maybe now that they created a new animation, you could hopefully hint that they're going to say, hey, we might be able to do increase the speed of the actual rocket launches, because they're limited right now by the animation time, because the animation time is fixed. So maybe because we have a new animation, now we have some more flexibility, and we're going to be able to use quality to scale the actual rocket silo. So that'll be a nice change. I'll do another review on this once we actually have the next FFF. So whenever we do another Friday Facts, and then I'll probably go and do another review, and I'll give my thoughts on it and how it's going to impact megabasing. But I'm super excited already for how this is going to change megabasing in the late game. And I will say right now that I am so happy that I have not really fully redesigned the way that I do Prometheum, because I'm going to completely dismantle all the ships the moment that we go to 2.1, and I'm going to need a whole new mechanism, probably. Super excited for designing these new types of space platforms that we're going to need, and I'll release videos as we go and create them. So stay tuned, subscribe for that. Otherwise, what am I working on right now? We're going and testing. I've got right now results. I'm going back and forth with my Discord on where we're at with utility science. We're testing a whole bunch of things of all different kinds of qualities for yellow science, and we're going to be having some really exciting results that are going to be coming out here soon. So subscribe if you're interested in that. We're benchmarking to see which of all of these wonderful submissions that have been submitted to this competition. Here's a preview of all of them. We've got 26 different designs with the 2 extras that have been added in the middle of the competition. So very excited to see how everybody does. And also we're going to see if Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q5 is going to be the best approach for crafting utility science on Novice. There's all kinds of stuff like railgun voiding and train smashing and recyclers to get material fast. We're throwing everything at it this time, so super excited to see it. So subscribe if you're interested in that. Otherwise, my name is Nasty. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.